What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday. I hope that y'all are doing so well. Welcome back to another Adobe Live. My name is Idara. I'm going to be your host for today. And today we are joined by Esteban Toro. Esteban, how are you?
I'm fine, Rara. How's everything?
Everything is going well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited. So what we have planned, we have a lot planned today, but we're going to join Esteban as he's going to take us along his post process of editing different lighting situations, using developing tools in Lightroom Classic and adding masks to bring photos to life. So I'm really excited for that. And before we get started, go ahead and drop in the chat. Where are y'all calling in from? So I am calling from Phoenix, Arizona. Esteban, where are you joining from?
New York City.
New York City. Oh, I love New York. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So y'all drop where you are joining us from, whether you are on Behance or YouTube. We always love to give you all a great welcome. So just let us know where you're calling in from. And really, as always, thank you so much for joining us on Adobe Live. You want to make sure that you join the community and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So follow us on Adobe Live on Instagram for the latest streams, updates, and more. If you are on YouTube, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to our Adobe Live YouTube channel as well. That way you can catch all of our live streams. If you miss anything, you can always refer back to past streams as well. And yes, I'm seeing Anika from Toronto, Canada. I'm seeing Clever from around the San Antonio area. That is so great. Welcome, y'all. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Esteban, to tell us a little bit about you, your work, and what we have planned for today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Hello, everyone in the Adobe Live community. My name is Esteban Toro. I'm based in New York City. I'm a filmmaker and travel photographer. I have been to more than 50 countries around the world, photographing, filming different type of
Wow.
projects, but especially travel is what I have been focusing a lot. So what you see right now on the screen, this is my portfolio. I really want to, like that you have the feeling of who's the person who's going to be
Mm-hmm.
teaching you today. I think that's really important always to consider. I have been lucky to be into all these places, to visit them, to photograph them, to film them.
Mm-hmm.
So of course the question comes a lot like, how do you post-process your work? How do you post-process your pictures? And how do you get that light? I get that question a lot. Like people ask me like, do you use natural light? Do you use artificial light? How do you build all that? So I decided to bring for this session some of my most iconic images, such as the ones you just saw before, the fisherman, the woman in the with the Taj Mahal in the background, or this
Mm-hmm.
image as well in Vietnam. I'm going to be post-processing these pictures from the very raw file. So you will be seeing how I started, how I think about the light, but I also decided to bring new images. I was recently on a 3-month trip around South America, and then I went to Australia. So I
Wow.
also brought some of these raw files that I have never ever post-processed. So fingers crossed that things go well because we're alive. Um, and I will be sharing as well, like I decided like, okay, pictures that I already know how to post-process, but also new images. So you will get the feeling of how I actually do my work. Please, this is really important for you all seeing us live right now. Ask as many questions as you have. This session
Yes.
is absolutely for you. So
Mm-hmm.
we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear like your questions. I want to, like this session is made for you. Let me just share quickly. This is my, my website. This is my Instagram. If you want to follow, it's Esteban Toro M. And I'm just going to jump into the images that I brought today. You can see I brought about 24
Wow.
images. They're really different. They're under different light conditions. And I like that because I want to speak about the multiple differences between how I capture them and how I'm going to post-process them.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, please also feel free to tell me like, oh, I like this picture. I think this picture will be really good to post-process,
Yes,
something
yes.
like that. Happy. I know that Irara will be really happy to share as well. So
No,
write
of
your comments.
course. Awesome. Yeah, if y'all have any comments, drop them in the chat box. I'm going to be looking out for them so that way I can share them with Esteban as he's editing.
Thank you. Thank you
Beautiful.
for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first things first, I want to start with something that seems a little bit like challenging and complicated at first. That is like, how do I tend to photograph my images? So let me jump with a picture such as this one. This picture, this is how the raw file is looking like right now. This is an image that it's a little bit challenging to capture because I had the sunset there and I had a model in the front. This model that was a non-model, but this is not the time for that story. It's a longer story, but this person in front of my camera is not being lit by anything. It's just the sun in the background. So I have to rely on the sensor of my camera to be able to understand how to post-process it. But of course, that means that the risk is high because I can easily follow into the trap that my picture will be overexposed or underexposed, and I will not be able to have enough details. So having the right gear has helped me to develop that as well, but also understanding the gear that I'm using. So if I'm using whatever camera, I really need to test it before and understand how my camera is going to react to raw files, recovering the shadows and the highlights. So I will know how far I can push it when I'm on the field. Imagine the situation, like for this photograph that you will see post-process in a second, I had about few seconds because there was a storm just coming in to take the right picture, to take the right exposure and decide if it was going to work after in post-production. So having that understanding before really helps to build better images. I especially like to photograph during sunrises and sunsets because I feel that those are the best lighting opportunities for my work. The way I see the light, the way I see, the world, maybe. But it's always challenging to get like good lighting. It doesn't always happen. Like sometimes you have bad luck and you have like really cloudy days. And yeah, this is basically one of the images that I brought, or sometimes you have to take pictures during midday, or pictures such as this one that we will be talking, and I will tell you why I decided to bring it, that is just like midday photograph.
These are absolutely stunning. Just real quickly, I just had to tell you, Esteban, absolutely stunning work. And there was one comment, a few people are saying photo number 5 for sure they want to see.
Photo
so
number 5.
I wanted to point that out too.
Yeah, great. And this is a great picture, really challenging as well. So let me just go really quick through this one and what I'm gonna do. With a picture like this one, I will just go to the basics. And I will try to understand at first, like how far can I actually, like push it to recover the shadows and the highlights. So that being said, Lightroom is pretty intuitive. So I will just go to highlights. I will decrease the highlights as far as I can. And look, it's really interesting. I can actually see the circle of the sun. And then I can just go to the shadows and start recovering all the shadows. And then I can go to the blacks and recover as much as I can from the shadows. And actually, I'm seeing a good level of detail. I know that many of you will be wondering, like, yeah, but that will create noise. Yes, that is true. I'm not so concerned about the noise right now. Oh, my mouse is a little bit crazy right now. But you can see it, like, yes, it's creating noise, but I can definitely work with that after. Like, I can just go to detail and try to reduce the noise, or I can just keep it like that. To me, it's not bothering me. If it bothers you, of course, we can discuss it after. Another side note that I want to make for this whole session, I'm going to be telling you which controllers, which sliders I'm moving here in Lightroom, but please try to see it more like how the follow step by step. Try to understand how I'm thinking the picture so you can reapply this concept to your pictures when you're post-processing them. If you want to go and see the step by step, I have developed some tutorials with Lightroom. It's for free. It's included with your Lightroom membership. If you go to the Lightroom CC, and you search Esteban Toro on the discovery tutorials, you will be able to find some of these pictures that I post-process, and you can see the step-by-step. I'm going to go through that process, but still try to understand more about like how I'm thinking the light in these pictures. So after I have recovered the shadows and the blacks here, I'm going to try to add a little bit more of contrast. I feel that is missing a little bit of like that information. So first thing I'm going to try to do is add a little bit of clarity. It will add a little bit more of detail to my image, and it's looking beautiful. The second thing that I want to add is a little bit more of contrast. And then it's already looking good. I really like it. But still, if I want to post-process this picture, I would like to work on some details. For example, I'm seeing a little bit of information here in this area. This is some people waiting on the shore over here. I'm not so interested in you as a viewer to see this final image with the people over here. So the way I think about it is I need to darken it a little bit. So I will either use a brush or maybe a gradient filter. I will see how I'll figure it out. But the first thing that I want to do is kind of remove by darkening this area, so it will not be visible. And I want to highlight a little bit more the Taj Mahal. I think it's one of the highlights of the picture, so I wanted to make it more visible. And then I would love to work a little bit more on the dress on the model. Yeah. So I'm actually gonna try something that Lightroom released, I think about a year and a half ago, that I'm absolutely stunned by. That is the subject mask. When I post-processed this picture maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, Lightroom didn't have this tool, but nowadays we have it, so let's just gonna try it. It's right now selecting the mask. Let's see how well it performs with this model over here. So what Lightroom is doing right now is just selecting. Wow, look at that. Just did it. Now it's so easy. Before, what I used to do was just with a mask, with a brush, just going through the subject, trying to select the model. I'm just, I'm just gonna add a little bit more of exposure. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of clarity will help me, not so much. I think that's about it. And maybe later on, I will decrease, let's just a little bit of shadows, so it will look still look real. I'm gonna create a new mask. I'm just gonna add a brush over here. And once I have my brush, I'm just gonna go with exposure. And I'm gonna decrease exposure on this area. So let's just darken this part over here. Should be working. And I just start decreasing the size of the brush as I navigate through this part. I can add a little bit of contrast somewhere about here, and then I'm just gonna go all the way to here, so it will kind of diffuse at the very, very end of this part. If it's too much, I can just go back a little bit. I don't want to darken it that much. So now it's looking good. I'm gonna create another mask to work specifically on Taj Mahal. So I'm just gonna go with another brush. I'm gonna go with exposure, and I'm just gonna add a little bit more of light on this area that already has some light. I like this mask, it's looking good. I'm gonna add it over here on the roof. Of course, I have to keep it real. I have to be really conscious that it has to look like natural light. And maybe a good tip on this is that sometimes it will take longer for you to understand if it's looking like real light. So what I like to do is I like to make a first post-processing. I look at it, I leave it for some minutes, I go and drink a coffee or post-process another image, and then I go and look again, and then I will see if it's looking real or not. And let me think what else I will do to this picture. I would like to decrease a little bit of light on the top, so it will look a little bit more dramatic. So I will create a new mask. I'm going to add a linear gradient on the top, and I'm just going to pull it here. Right, should be it. I'm not liking this so much, so I'm going to create a new one, linear gradient. And yeah, this is way better. So I'm just gonna decrease a little bit the exposure. And if I want, I can try to see if I change the temperature and make it a little bit bluish. That will probably add something interesting. Okay, this is somewhere where I want to be. Right.
This is beautiful.
And then finally, I will just add a little bit of contrast, just to make sure that everything is, not decrease, just add a little bit more of contrast to make sure that everything is kind of packed together. If I added one mask here with light, maybe I should add a little bit slight of light over here on the reflection as well. So I'm just gonna add a brush, a little bit of exposure in this area. All right. This is looking good. I know that it's too much light, so many of you will be wondering, like, that's too much, but I'm working on that. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit subtle. something like this. And suddenly, you know, in about like a few, well, not a few clicks, but some clicks, we pass from the image on the left to the image on the right. And this, of course, helps me to understand like, okay, this is like, I'm really pushing my raw file in this picture and I still can get good results. So this is how I start understanding how much I can actually post-process on my pictures. Erara, tell me if there's any questions so far.
Yes, no questions at the moment, but we do have comments about one, some people said amazing new tools for them, and then also really great for them to see how to recover a dark photo that might be underexposed. So this is really great so far. But if y'all have questions, whether you are on Behance or on YouTube, drop your questions so that way we can go ahead and answer them.
Wonderful. Now that you mention it, like recovering highlights, that's why I decided to bring these 3 photographs that I captured recently. So this is Iguazu Falls in the border between Argentina and Brazil. So what you're seeing here is the Brazilian side, and in front is Argentina. I decided to bring these pictures because it's a really interesting challenge. It's another difficult situation to recover the light. And look at this. It's like, as I was taking these photographs, I was hesitant, like, is it gonna be like enough for me to recover this sun? I wasn't sure. I was using the Zebra in my mirrorless camera, if you're familiar with that concept. Trying to understand if the light will be enough. But I basically want to show you what happens if I don't expose for the highlights as I would normally do. Actually, let's see what happens with this one. I think this one will be overexposed. As I mentioned to you before, I have never worked on these pictures before, so bear with me. I think this is going to be overexposed. Wow, it still has details. That's impressive.
Wow.
I was really thinking it was going to be just blown out and just like there will be no information, but actually there's some good data over there. So I'm just going to recover a little bit of the shadows. I'm going to recover a little bit of the clarity. But okay, before we go on how I'll post-process this image, let's try to do the same with this one where we have the sun over there. Let's see if we can actually recover the sun. It's looking, this is, if you compare this sun with the one from the women with Taj Mahal, I think this is a sun that will not look beautiful, especially if I'm thinking about printing it. Look at this. This will be basically a gray area in my picture, in my paper, so it will not look beautiful at all. So this is one situation that if I have this picture just like that with the sun and I want it like that, I would just leave the sun a little bit like overexposed, although it's really not my favorite situation. And look, it's, I mean, I feel that even if I recover the light, this is not looking beautiful to me, especially if I compare with something like this. Let me just compare these 2 files so you can see the difference. Yeah, just here. So if I compare these 2, I feel that there are more chances that the picture on the right side, the candidate one, will look more beautiful because I can work with this space over here, whereas the sun already looks like a little bit too overexposed, and also the water looks a little bit like I'm recovering too much of the shadows there. So I'm just gonna go and develop this picture. I actually like what's happening here. I had a little bit of dust in my sensor, as you can all see. So I'm just gonna use the healing tool over here. So it will be just a couple of clicks to recover those spots. This is something that I really love doing in Lightroom. Yep, that was it. Pretty easy. And now I'm gonna start creating a more dramatic sky. So the first thing I'm gonna add a linear gradient on the top of the frame, just right here, to make it darker, add a little bit more of clarity and maybe contrast, so it will look extremely dramatic. Then I'm planning to add another layer here, like another gradient filter somewhere here, so it will look also more dramatic. I'm gonna add maybe like clarity in this area that I have this light just crossing through. I think that will be beautiful. And finally, I'm just gonna work on this area over here. So this is kind of a test that I was running for my camera to understand how it will work in this specific situation that I have to mention. It's a pretty complicated scenario. So I'm just gonna bring the mask somewhere here. So if you notice something that I'm just telling you is I'm planning what I'm doing before I'm actually doing it in the photograph. What I have noticed that happens many times, especially for people who's starting into post-processing photography, is that, and this happened to me as well many times, is that I try to do many things and I don't think what I actually want to get out of the image, and that's why it happens to be like a whole mess, if that makes sense. Oh,
yeah,
I just closed my mask. So I'm just gonna go with exposure, decrease the exposure. You see how it's creating this really dramatic sky. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast. If it's too much, I can always go back, so I'm not too concerned about that. So if this is 1.6, I will say that maybe 0.40 will be about it. I think it's looking better. Maybe just I'll say 30. I really like to work with this numbers. I think it helps me a lot. It's adding, so it's creating more of a dramatic sky. And I'm just going to add a second linear gradient. This time it will be on this side. So I'm just going to pull it from here all the way.
And we have one, I thought I saw a question. Yes, here we go. So we have one question, Esteban, as you're doing that. This person asked, do you do all of your edits using Adobe software? And then do you have any courses for photo editing? I know you mentioned it earlier, but if you can re-mention for that person, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I use like Adobe Lightroom. It's my 100% to go. Sometimes I will go to Photoshop, not to modify anything in the image itself, like doing like photoshopping the picture per se, but I have like some final touches that I like to do there. Just maybe my own workflow, nothing beyond that. And yes, I do offer courses on how to post-process your images and actually teach you how to go from scratch, how the software works, what's the library to develop. You know, I have really spent a lot of time in Lightroom, so yes, I do. All right, so I'm just gonna decrease a little bit over here. I'm gonna add a little bit more of temperature, so it will look even more like sunset feeling, and I can actually want to try with a little bit with tint to see if it makes it a little bit more. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna add more clarity. Actually, I can add a lot. Let me just close this window. It's distracting me a little bit. It's way too much color. So if I want to add more clarity, which I definitely want to do, I shouldn't add so much color over here. All right, and this is working better for me. Cool. And last, I think I want to work on the waterfall, on the water side of this part. So I'm just gonna add a brush and I'm gonna add a little bit of exposure.
And then another question is, do you ever use curves for contrast in your images?
That's a really interesting question. I never use curves in Lightroom or in any other software, and this can be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to answer that question. I like controversy in these lives. Many photographers will start writing, how dare you? But I think that curves are a little bit like how to say it politely. No, I'm going to say it not politely. I don't know how to use the basics, or I don't want to go to that. So I'll just start pulling the curve to get whatever results I can. So let me explain it. Like well, with the basic one, I have control over everything, like the highlights, the shadows, the whites, the blacks. The curve, yes, I have a histogram here that is showing me the shadows, the darks, the lights, the highlights, and I will be able to control it. I feel that I don't get as much control as I get with the basic. So learning to use the basic and learning to use the masks has allowed me to have never had to use the curves before. Again, not by any means saying that if you get good results using them, okay, go for that. Like use whatever you have, you know, like whatever makes you feel comfortable with. But I personally find that with what I'm showing you right now, I get the results that I like.
Yeah.
But I know that there are many professional photographers who know what they're doing, who also use curves. But yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Awesome. That was a really good question.
Yeah, tricky one to answer.
Yeah.
To the person who asked, like he or she just wants to see the world on fire. All right, I'm just gonna add as the last step for this image, I'm just gonna add a little bit more of like light on this area. Not so much because otherwise I will miss the contrast. Something that I like to do is I like to add a lot of exposure first, kind of like way too much, and then I just see and fix on the process. So it's like, okay, I add a lot. I'm just gonna decrease it, so it will still keep a little bit of contrast, but not so contrasty as it was before. Maybe somewhere, let's meet in the middle, somewhere here. And I'm just gonna add a little more of contrast over here, maybe a little bit more of clarity, and something like that. I start liking this picture. It has turned definitely into something more dramatic than it was before. So you can see how the sky became super dark, kind of like a storm is coming, but also you have all this light coming through on the right side, and you have information on the waterfall. This is how I will post-process this picture, kind of like a quick post-processing. But what I really wanted to show you with this is the difference between like being able to, like to understand how you will capture your image. So if you want to take something from this session, if there is something that I want you all to understand, is that the most important thing about post-processing is pre-planning your pictures, is understanding your gear, is understanding the light that you want and the light that you're desiring to capture, but also how it will perform when you will post-process. So it's something like when you take the picture and you see it through your viewfinder or you see it in your display in your camera, you already know what you're gonna be doing after in the post-processing. So it'll be just like, okay, I'm just gonna download the pictures, I'm just gonna add a mask here, there, and like basic stuff. I'm just gonna use the curves to fix it, whatever it is, and then that's it. Like my picture is done in about 2 to 5 minutes. That's how I like to see photography.
Yeah, of course. And then I have a quick question. You mentioned understanding your gear. What do you shoot with?
So I forgot to mention, this is important. It's part of my career. I'm a Sony ambassador and I'm a BenQ global ambassador. So I use Sony gear. I use a Sony A7R4 16-35 millimeter, 24-70, 70-200, 200-600, 85 millimeter lens. So I have these lenses and then a 90 millimeter macro lens. This is like my gear to go. Of course, I'm not always carrying all these lenses and cameras with me. I usually carry one camera, one lens. But this is what I use to photograph. So if we're talking, many of you will be wondering, like, okay, we're talking about beautiful light. Of course, the light is pretty dramatic. You have been kind of lucky enough to find this light. What happens with other type of light? What happens with daylight? I don't go and capture during sunset. So that's why I brought this image. And this photograph, it's, in my perspective, it's a picture that it's really hard to post-process. I honestly don't know much what I can do to this picture, and I captured it because it was, a really good, nice walk around this place, and I had my camera, so I was like, okay, let's take a snap. But the problem is that I feel that despite that the sensor of my camera is really good, look that I cannot recover, or I can recover a lot of information, but it starts looking a little bit like not so realistic, and of course not as dramatic as a sunset photograph or blue hour, that we will jump into that in a second, picture. So this is like a picture like that. If I have no other option, this is what I will do, like recover a little bit of the shadows, maybe not so much, maybe something like this, and I will leave it like that. Many of you will be wondering, like, okay, but with this, like, you have a slider that is called temperature, so you will be able to make it look like a sunset. all right, let's give it a try. And now, Irara, let me ask you, does it look like a real sunset?
No, it doesn't.
Does this picture look like a real sunset? This one, right?
The one from before, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sunset. It's like the light is there. It's dramatic. That's how I can create, I can play with this. And if we had maybe 5 hours in Adobe Live, I will start going through all these beams with a mask and making it, more noticeable and more visible and more dramatic. Whereas this picture, well, it looks like I just applied kind of a filter on it. So I cannot make this look like a sunset. If I want to photograph this and look like a sunset, I have to go at sunset to capture it, or sunrise, or whatever. So there is not much I can do about this picture. And the reason why I brought this picture is because I want to show you why I don't photograph during this time. I know that there are photographers who do it and they have a precious work. I just don't see the light in these conditions. But then you'll be wondering, like, okay, so if you just photograph during sunrise and sunset, what do you do the rest of the day? Well, I sleep. No, I recover the time that I didn't have during the night. No, I usually will do other things like photographing indoors, something such as this picture. So I'll be looking for more control light where I can take maybe some portraits, such as the one that I'm showing you, which I have never post-processed before because this I captured maybe like 2 months ago in Cuba. So again, what I will do to this picture, let me just, before I start clicking all around, I will just tell you what I would like to do. I want to recover a little bit more of information on the right side, on the flag, on her face, a little bit on the middle of the picture where it says Fidel. I want to recover information there because I feel there is texture that is beautiful, but I don't want it to be like super overexposed everywhere. Absolutely. So I want to keep that balance, the contrast balance in this photograph. So let's try to do it. And maybe I will give it a try in black and white because I see a potential for this one in black and white as well. So let's start by recovering a little bit of the exposure. I know that it's a lot, but I'm not gonna try to recover a little bit of that contrast later. So I just increase the exposure, decrease the highlights. I'm gonna add a little bit more of contrast. I still see that the whites are kind of blown, but now it's better. Okay. I'm just gonna add a little bit more of clarity, way too much. All right, that's too much. And I'm gonna add contrast a little bit over here. By adding contrast and clarity, I got a little bit of like excessive saturation in my taste. So I'm just gonna decrease a little bit the vibrance first. I like to start working with the vibrance. It still keeps the warm feeling of the picture, but it's not as, I don't know, like saturated as before. Maybe just a tiny bit more saturation, but no, not that much. Over here. And now I'm gonna start working on the background. So the first thing I would like to do is kind of isolate the subject from the background. So what I'm gonna do is, using these wonderful tools that Adobe Lightroom has, I'm just gonna select the subject. It's gonna do the job for me while I drink a sip of water.
And then we have another question that says, while you do that, is what is the difference, or when do you use clarity over contrast?
Oh, great question. Clarity, I like to use it when I want the picture to look a little bit more dramatic. Like it will add texture, it will add contrast as well to the picture. But if I go way too much, it will be way too much. And maybe I will show you in a second to answer that question. Contrast, I use it when I want to give the final touches. So let's say that I was working on separate areas of the picture. So I was working on the background, and then I was working on the sun, and then I was working on the sky, and then the subject. If I want to make it all compact and together so it will look like tight, I will just increase the contrast. So it will help me that everything will look like, yeah, like compact. That's the way I will put it. There are technical differences between contrast and clarity that of course you can read carefully in like Adobe Lightroom forums. They are different. Clarity will add a little bit more of kind of a crispy feeling, but if you go too much, it will be way too much.
Yeah.
just to put it that way. So let me actually answer that question by like with her. So what happens if I add a lot of clarity? Oh, does she look real?
No.
Not
Not
anymore,
at all.
right?
No.
No, that looks terrible. And let's, let's go all the way. Let's add also clarity here. Look, done. My picture is ready.
Yep.
All right, next one. This is looking like this is looking terrible. So yeah, I'm just gonna work seriously on that. So that's why I said that we have to be careful with clarity, not to go way too much. So I just selected my subject. Since I want to isolate her from the background, I think the light on her is looking beautiful. I'm just going to increase a little bit the exposure, just a tiny bit, decrease a little bit the highlights so she will not be overexposed. And then I'm going to create this magic with Lightroom. I'm just going to duplicate my mask. So I'm just going to go here, duplicate mask 1. It already shows me the subject. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to invert this mask. So what I'm doing by inverting the mask is that now the background will be selected, as you can see here, and not her. And why I want to do that? Well, really easy, because I want to isolate her from the background and recover kind of that contrast that I had before, something like this. And now that I'm working in the background and it will not affect her, I'm going to add a little bit of clarity. Why? Because in humans, I have noticed that clarity does not perform so well because we have this real reference of how human skin looks like. So as soon as we notice that it's not so real, we see something fake there.
Yep.
Backgrounds or things that or places we don't know, that we are less familiar with, we don't realize that it has some texture added to it. So that's kind of a maybe tip that I have found during this trip of post-processing images. So I just added a little bit more of clarity to that. I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast. And I'm liking it so far. I would love to maybe decrease a little bit more of light here. I think there's unnecessary information here as well as here. So I'm just going to try with a brush. Let's see how it goes. And I'm just going to try over here, just decreasing a little bit of light somewhere here. I know that it's too much, but you already know that I like to work a little bit over the boundaries and then come back. And then I'm going to create another brush somewhere here. And this has a pretty interesting light that if I want, but we don't have the time because we have 24 images and we have to see them all in less than 1 hour. So I will normally go and maybe work like shadows over here with a mask and then just light over here. So we will create a more dramatic feeling on the stairs. So what I'm going to do actually for this picture is I'm just going to add a little bit of light to this beautiful sculpture, this column over here. I know that it's too much, but you already know me. We're getting to know each other. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast at the very end to make it kind of compact all together. I like what is happening now. I just want to see how it will look black and white. Wow.
Yep, beautiful.
I think black and white, it's the way. And look, something interesting. Everything that I have done before will still work for this black and white post-processing. So this is one of the moments where I will be spending 20 minutes just looking at color and black and white, and I will never be able to decide. So I will probably end up with one version in black and white, one in color. But you kind of get the feeling of how I will post-process a portrait like this. So I'm just going to jump in the one, unless there's any question.
No, I think we're still good to go.
Why are you guys so shy today?
I know, bring more questions. If y'all have any questions on YouTube or Behance, drop them. And then also, if you guys have any guest recommendations for future lives, if you would like to nominate yourself or someone you know to be a guest on Adobe Live, make sure you submit your recommendations for creators in the tab on Behance. So if you look above the chat, you'll see where it says chat, info, and then guest recommendations. So you can also recommend more people so we can bring them onto live. So just wanted to drop that quick memo in. But yes, of course, ask more questions if you have them, or if you're enjoying the live, let us know as we continue through this.
Yep, wonderful. So I'm just gonna go with this one that you guys asked for. Yeah, this is the raw file. This is one of these pictures. Maybe it happened as this one that I just look at the like in the camera and I was just amazed and I was like, wow, this is a great picture, regardless of the post-processing that I will do. There is not much that I need to do to this one. Something that I would like, I don't know if you can see it very well on your screens, but it has some, like there is some beautiful background here. I will think like maybe I can add some contrast and make it darker, and still I have that background there that I think is looking beautiful. And then I will sort the way I see this picture is like I see light and shadow. So I see lights over here on his forehead, his eyes, the leaf, of course, and his hands. And I see shadows, like kind of the rest of the picture. So what I'm gonna try to do is instead of working a lot with the basics, I'm just gonna go with the masking tools and I'm just gonna go with brush. And I will start with exposure. So I'm just gonna add exposure. I just have the feeling, I don't have a like instruction manual, but I just have the feeling that I want to start working on his hands.
And was this, just to confirm, was this shot with natural light?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely natural light. So I just added a little bit of light over here. That's good for me. I'm just gonna create another brush. I'm gonna add a little bit more of exposure. So I'm just gonna kind of keep more light on his forehead, eyes, and not this eyes, this part maybe. I like it before, like right over here. All right, this is looking good. And maybe a little bit over here, his lips and chin, this part. All right. And just a tiny bit. Now I'm gonna go and work specifically on his eyes because they are gorgeous. Look at this beautiful blue. So I'm just gonna add a brush, add a little bit of exposure, and I'm just gonna work where I see light. I will just add light. And I can do one for both of his eyes. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Okay, light on both eyes. And now a brush, decreasing exposure. Somewhere over here, somewhere over here. I know that it's too much, don't you worry. I'm just erasing a little bit so it won't be as much. Somewhere here, I like it. So what I just did, I just highlight his eyes. Let me show you a little bit of before and after. So this is before. And after, you should be able to see it now. Yeah. So this is a little bit of before and after, how I'm working on his eyes, trying to make it a little bit like pop up more than it already does. Just gonna straighten the picture a little bit. I like to keep this close so it will stay in the same format. And something like this, not so much, is crooked. Okay, I have the reference here. I'm guiding myself with the line of the leaf, but maybe it's crooked a little bit. Okay, cool. Basically something, what else I will do to this picture? I see a little bit of light on his chest. So maybe I want to recover a little bit more here. A little bit more of light over here. Just a tiny bit. That helps me to get more details. And then I will definitely add a little bit of clarity, and that adds a lot to this picture. Let me just add a little bit of contrast to make it pop up a little bit more. Oops. And I think this is how I will see this picture post-process. Let's look at a before and after. It's not changing that much. But
Beautiful.
honestly, I don't see more that I will do to this picture. So yeah, this is something that I will capture during the day while I'm yeah, just waiting for the right light to happen. Or if I have a cloudy day, then I will definitely be taking pictures any time of the day. Cloudy days, photographers, or maybe, yeah, like I think we photographers like it a lot. People will think
Yeah.
like, oh, it's not a good day because it's cloudy, but it's one of the best days because you can take pictures all day long.
Yep.
So this is in Central Park here in New York City. I basically, what I like about this picture is how beautiful the contrast between the green and the blue of her eyes is looking like. So I'm just adding a little bit of exposure, contrast, and maybe again, I want to isolate a little bit the subject from in general, from the background. So what I'm gonna do is just, I could use subject, but I rather use, for this one, I'm just gonna use the linear gradient. I'm gonna decrease the exposure. I'm just gonna add a little bit more here. So this had a lot of light that was kind of distracting me from my main subject. And now I want to reduce a little bit of highlights. I think the sweater has too much light, but I still want light on her face. So after that, I'm just gonna go here, create a new mask, brush, and I'm just gonna add exposure to recover a little bit of light on her face. I know that it's too much, so don't you worry. And I'm just going to compensate it. Usually when I work that close, I like to go back again and see if it's still matching. I will definitely like to increase a little bit the vibrance, and maybe I will love to play a little bit with the temperature to see if making it colder or warmer will make it better. What do you guys think? Write me in the comments if it should be warmer or colder, and we will come back to this one. Pretty simple. And maybe you already saw my secret of the eyes. So I'm just gonna work on her eyes to make them
Her
pop
eyes
up.
are beautiful, so blue and piercing.
I will tell my wife what you just told about her.
Oh, yeah, she's so beautiful.
Now you cannot say anything bad about these pictures. I'm just joking. Yeah, I really love this portrait. Yeah, so as you can see, well, I'm just adding a little bit so eyes will pop up a little bit more. This is something that I will do to this picture, but let us know what you think in the comments about like bluer or like more bluish or more like warmer for this one. Just want to make sure that we don't have any comments so far or questions.
We're still good. We're still pushing through. If y'all have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat. I did have a question of even the picture number 5. What locations was that photo shot, and how often are you traveling and shooting in these different countries?
All right. So this picture was taken. This is in front of his door, where he lives. This is in Ethiopia. So in Ethiopia, yeah, I was just in front of his house. We met for a couple of hours. I had the chance to photograph him in different locations, and it just like I just sort of liked, and I was like, this is perfect. This is like kind of imitating like window light, and that's how I did it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the second question was how frequently I'm doing these projects. It depends. I would say like pre-pandemic, I will travel 9 to 10 months a year doing these kind of projects. Now after the pandemic, I have slowed down a little bit the process. I'm doing more like certain projects. So it will be about like 3 months a year, somewhere around those numbers. Let me see. Let's work a little bit like we have worked in remote locations. This is another picture I haven't post-processed. This was a beautiful sunrise that I had in New York City recently. So again, this is a situation where I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's like
Mhm.
every time that you want to take pictures, the sky is so boring. But every time you're going to the grocery store, the
That's
sky is
when, yeah.
just dramatic. You're like, ah,
Absolutely, absolutely.
right. So I feel all photographers can feel me on that one. So something that I really think about sunset is like, yeah, it's or sunset or sunrise. It's important that the sky is dramatic, it's beautiful, but you have to have something in the foreground so it will make
Yes.
beautiful. Because if this is a picture that is just, well, not like this, of course, but if it's something like this, there is nothing really interesting
Mm-hmm.
over here. Like, yeah, it's beautiful, of course, beautiful sunset, but what it makes really beautiful this picture is that to have the city in the foreground as well.
Yes. Yes.
So let's see how it goes. I have never developed it before, so I'm just gonna, you know what I'm gonna do, recover the shadows, recover the blacks. I have a lot of information here. I'm gonna recover the highlights. I'm gonna add a little bit of clarity. I'm gonna add a little bit more of exposure to the general image, maybe something like this. And yeah, I think it's looking something like that. Maybe I will see what happens if I play with the temperature. This is something that I like to do all the time to understand how the picture will change if I make it like warmer or colder,
Mm-hmm.
and something like that. I like this. Like, it's a cool snap anyway. And let me see this one. This might be more interesting. Yep, because I have all the detail of the New Yorker. And then, so I just increase the exposure. So you will wonder, like, why you increase the exposure almost 2 steps if you could do it through the camera? Because I was using the Zebra and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that everything will be correctly exposed, that I will not have underexposed
Yes.
any detail or overexposed the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm doing it. And I'm just gonna recover a little bit of the shadows, a little bit of the blacks. I'm just gonna add a little bit of clarity. I'm gonna add a little bit more of vibrance over here. I will touch a little bit of the haze just to give it a try. I think that some of you was asking, like, what about clarity and contrast? I think that the haze is one of those that I really try in specific situations when there is haze, and I just try to remove a little bit, but it tends to change the colors by a lot. So I try to be extremely careful when I apply it. So I will just do a tiny bit on this one. I'm gonna actually increase a little bit more the exposure, just a tiny bit, and I'm gonna decrease the highlights. Let me see what happens if I make it warmer or colder. I think I like it more warmer, and somewhere like that I will leave something like that that will look really dramatic. I will leave this photograph. Let's jump after this city, and before, like, we go with other picture, another cityscape. So this is Sydney, blue
Oh,
hour.
wow, this is beautiful.
Yeah, the city is just gorgeous.
Oh, I
Yeah,
need to travel. I haven't traveled yet this year, and I've seen all these photos, Esteban. I'm like, I need to get on a plane.
all right, let's do it. I'll join you. So I will recover for this one. If this is a long exposure, well, yeah, 15 seconds. It's a long exposure. I'm just gonna start decreasing the highlights. I was making sure that nothing will be overexposed, so I'm just gonna decrease the highlights somewhere here. I'm gonna increase the shadows, so you get more details in the bridge, in the opera, in the city. I'm gonna increase the clarity, but not that much, because this is already, like, since the city is there and you will have all this structure over there, adding a lot of clarity will be way too much. So I have to be careful with that. I'm just gonna increase a little bit the exposure, decrease the highlights, and I'm gonna try to make it a little bit bluish, and I like it there. So it's pretty simple. This is something like this is how post-process this picture. I see something guiding here. I have no idea what is that, but I don't like it. So I'm just gonna take the healing tool, and Lightroom is gonna do a great job for me. I'm
Yep.
pretty sure. Oop,
And there
there
it
you go.
is, gone.
Yeah, that's all. This is how I'll post-process an image like that, nothing beyond that. But again, how did I capture this picture? Going to the blue hour, I went to this location before, I actually, like, I didn't take my camera. I took my cell phone because I was lazy and it was hot. So I was just walking there and I would look with my wide angle lens and I would like, with my cell phone, and I was like, yep, this works. I like the composition. I like the angle. I'm going to come at blue hour. I'm going to wait for the right light to happen. And then I'm just going to take the picture. So everything that I did was pre-planned.
And I love that you say that, because I think as photographers, I do the same thing. As much as you can plan beforehand will save you so much time while you're shooting, and so much time while you're doing your post-processing as well.
And sometimes you have to fight the odds or the conditions. Let me just share, for example, the story about this one. This is Bogota. This is my hometown. That's why you feel an accent while I'm speaking. I was recently with a friend, Nico, is a good friend of mine, and I was taking pictures there. So it was really interesting. This city is one of the most difficult cities in the world to understand how the weather is going to behave, more than New York City or any other city that I have experienced, because it can say in the forecast something like, oh, we'll have sunset, and like it was going to be clear sky, and then it's just raining a lot. So during that week, it happened a lot to us. We were planning to go to this overlook of the city to have a, like a really good view of the city. It was raining and raining and raining, and you had to pay to go to this view. So we were like, let's postpone it for tomorrow. Let's keep checking for the weather. So it was the last day we were able to go, and as we were going up, it was raining and raining, and we're like, nah, it's not gonna happen. We're not gonna take beautiful pictures. But then suddenly, like clouds kind of clear up a little bit, and we got this beautiful sunset. So we aimed to go and capture during sunset, planning to do it. Of course, conditions didn't help us at first, but at the very end, I think it did. So it's kind of, you get your reward if you try hard, because it's like, I mean, the sunset is just beautiful in the background. So I'm just post-processing a little bit more over here. You can see a little bit of the city. I think that sky is pretty dramatic, and having that sky being so dramatic with those colors will help me to do something that I show you. Like, I tried to do it with this picture. I tried to make it look like a sunset, but it was like, no, don't pretend that it's a sunset. But since this picture, it's a sunset, I can just increase the temperature, make it look warmer, and it will actually still make sense. It will not look so fake as the other one. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more of clarity here. And I feel this image splits in two parts: the sky that is pretty dramatic and beautiful, and the city that has no light. So I'm just gonna add a linear gradient over here. I'm going to add one filter for this one. I'm just gonna add a little bit more of light. I'm gonna move it. Yep, this part, this is where I want it. I'm gonna add something like this. And I'm gonna add maybe a little bit warmer filter, like not filter, but temperature. And then a little bit more of clarity. And then I'm gonna make, you know what I'm gonna make? I'm gonna make another linear gradient for the sky, making it more dramatic, darkening it out. So it will be like, wow, like it's a storm is about to come up. And something like that. I will post-process this image. I will add contrast to make it even more dramatic. And it's too yellow for my taste. Maybe I will make it a little bit less. I will start playing with something like that until I reach the result that I want. So this is to kind of run through images, through cities, city images. Questions? Do we have questions so far, or are people still shy?
We're still a little shy in the chat, but
Okay,
maybe it could also be that you're just so informative that there aren't any questions at the moment. But as a reminder, whatever questions you guys have, please drop them in the chat. And Esteban, actually, since this is kind of a good point, we have about maybe like 25-ish, 26 minutes left in the live. Can you give us a quick recap of what we've talked about thus far for those people that may have just joined?
Sure thing. So if you're just joining, let me tell you what we have been through. I have been talking about how to understand that your camera sensor is working for certain light that you want to capture. So capturing pictures such as this one that is like backlight, it's really complicated. So understand your gear. Then we have discussed why I don't capture pictures during the Sunday, like during the middle of the day. I just do it during sunset or sunrise. Then we went to what I do during the rest of the day. So I do some portraits, or I work during cloudy, like overcast days are really good for me. And then we also talk about how to try to make the attempt to understand how your camera will perform in different conditions. And then we walked briefly through some portrait, and then we had a run through different city pictures. That's what we have discussed so far.
Lovely.
I hope I'm not missing anything.
No, not at
Well,
all.
now it's your time. Pick a picture that you want me to post-process.
Okay, let's see. I really like the number 9 is kind of catching me. That is stunning. I don't know what that portrait is. And is this the sky? What was this?
What is this? So this is an ice cave in Patagonia.
Oh, wow.
In South Argentina. Like, this is one of the southernmost areas in America. So
Wow.
yeah, I was photographing. This is my guide. So we were just walking over the glacier, and as we were coming out, he just showed us this ice cave, and I was really amazed. And I was like, I'm gonna make a portrait of you. So he's standing super cool, and this is a picture that I have never processed before, so it's challenging. I like the challenge.
Yes.
So let's see what I can do. First thing, it's blue, too blue, especially on him, but it needs to still remain blue because we want to show that it's an ice cave. But still, you don't see him. I didn't have any flash or any additional light, so I'm just trying to recover it by shadows. Works. Cool. Now we have details. Awesome. Maybe not as, I don't want so many details, so somewhere over here. And then I need to kind of separate these two areas. So I'm just gonna make it, let me see. I'm just gonna use a brush. I'm going to mask this area over here where all the rocks and he is standing. Let me just zoom in. All right. So I'll make sure that he is included in my mask. Okay. And now I'm gonna try to decrease, to make it warmer, basically. Yep. I think it works better, makes more sense. And of course, there are certain areas here that I didn't cover pretty well with my mask. So I'm just gonna make sure that it's looking good. I think the rocks are already looking too green. So I can do two things. First one, I can try to change the color temperature, or I can just work with the tint. Let me see if, the tint worked pretty well. Now it's not looking so green. His skin is looking way more realistic. And I'm gonna, now I'm gonna go back to the basics. I'm just gonna go with the highlights, add a little bit of contrast. Look how beautiful that's looking. Add clarity. I like it.
Yeah, beautiful.
What else I will do to this picture? I will definitely, since this is a portrait for him, and I wasn't that careful making the mask, I'm just gonna maybe select the mask and try to make it even better. So all his face will be covered by this mask. That's wonderful. So now he's looking more interesting. Let's just play. I just want to see something. I intentionally, while capturing this picture, I did the like I decreased the exposure, the temperature to make it bluish, but I want to make it warmer just to see what happens. So I'm just gonna kind of roughly play. So, all right, it's the green. This is, look at this color.
Wow,
this is beautiful.
that color is beautiful.
Yeah, I think this is the color This is the beauty of Lightroom, no? Like I mean, I just told you, like, you have to know exactly what you're gonna do, but you still get amazed in front of the computer.
Absolutely.
I love this color. I just want to make it a little bit less green. So this is +11. I'm just gonna try to change the tint. Yeah, something like that. Yep, so this is how I will probably edit this portrait.
What does that before and after look like?
Of course, that's a good question. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the difference is just huge.
Oh, so beautiful. And like with that, not that many steps as far as, I mean, there were steps, of course, but
yeah,
the time it took to really make those dramatic changes was really, really great to see.
Yeah, right. And look, something that I will consider later on is if I want to have the stones where he's standing with so much light, or I will make it kind of more subtle, so it will look, yeah, a little bit more interesting, like he's in the middle of this rock, you know, like you can decide after, but this is kind of the way to go with this one. This is how I will post-process this one. Yeah, and now look how beautiful it looks.
Yes.
In the thumbnails. I'm gonna go for a black and white. I know that people love to hear black and white. Are we still running good on time?
Or we're good. Yep. We're good on time. We have about 11 minutes before. Sorry, I'm lying. It's only 12:35 for me. I don't know what the time difference between. Yeah. So 2:35. We have until maybe about another like 20 minutes or so.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful.
My math was off.
That's where we're in photography.
Exactly. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a photographer.
Yeah. I know the feeling. All right. So this is a picture that, again, I was in a pretty complicated light situation because it was daylight. I didn't have, in contrast to this picture, sometimes I'm not so lucky to have the right place where I can take a picture like that. But she was looking beautiful, so I had to take this picture. The light is not my favorite, so I will try to, and there are many things that are not working for me. One of those is the purple kind of dress that she's wearing. I think it's a little bit distracting the most important and beautiful thing, that is her face. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna right now go to black and white. The way I like to go to black and white is just desaturate the image. Immediately, if you notice, it's stop distracting all the purple, and now where the attention is more on her face. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm going to start adding masks. So I'm gonna add a brush to her face. I'm gonna add exposure.
And while you do that, there's another question of, is all your work done in Lightroom Classic? Do you ever do anything more in Photoshop?
So the thing is that maybe I look younger than I am. So I started with Lightroom Classic, and I'm really a big fan of Classic. I know that CC, like Creative Cloud one, is wonderful. I have it installed on my phone, on my tablet, but still the magic of sitting in front of your computer with a screen in a big size, playing, you know, like music. This is not a this is not paid advertisement, but listening to Pink Floyd while you're editing.
Oh, yes.
And you know, that's magical. So that's why I use Classic over CC. Nothing beyond that. So yeah,
I'm the same way. I use CC every now and then, but Classic can be classic.
Yeah, that's why it's a classic, right? And the truth is that Pink Floyd is sponsoring this class. We wish, right?
We wish.
All right, so let me see. So I will just increase a little bit more of the light over here. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast. I'm gonna add a little bit of clarity. Oh, look at that, how beautiful her face is looking like. Especially, I decided to add clarity here, just a tiny bit, like 34. Because I have a little bit of texture on her face, the painting, so I want to recover that. After I have done that, I want to create another mask, another brush. I want to go to exposure, and I'm going to decrease a little bit of exposure over here on the dress, so you will have less attention. Of course, it has to be visible. And now after that, I want to, oh wait, it went all the way here to the background. I don't want that. Now that I have done that, I still want to isolate a little bit between the subject and the background. So I'm just gonna create a mask. I'm gonna select the subject. Lightroom is gonna do a great job, I'm sure. Detecting the subject. Radio silence, uncomfortable silence while we wait. I'm gonna drink water.
See if it'll capture the subject. I wonder if it's because of... Yes. So we are having a quick moment. We'll be right back, y'all. And we are
Guys,
back, y'all.
yeah, this was part of the show. We were
Yep.
so shy that we decided, like, like Idara just sent me a message, like, we're gonna pretend that something happened and we'll have
Exactly.
plenty of questions.
A
Sorry
little
about that.
pizzazz to the show.
Sorry about that. It just, you have a live show and something happens with your
Mhm.
computer. Let me just finish this one really quick. What I wanted to do is just mask the subject. Well, basically isolate the subject from the background and then just finish the exposure. But this is how I'm gonna work a black and white, and you can see the before and after as well. So you can see also the difference, how I try to to guide the light to the subject. That is the main thing that I'm interested in.
Mhm.
So that being said, we cover a lot today. Actually, we cover all the different light conditions, the portraits, black and white, cityscapes, landscapes. But of course, happy to be here with you guys. I don't know, Idara, if you have any question.
No, Esteban, you did an incredible job today. Thank you so much for taking us into your world and your work and for showing us all of these different portraits. I know I love this so much. What image did y'all have as your favorite portrait? Let me know. We just so you know, we have a lot of comments in here that are really, really grateful for your time as well as talking about how breathtaking your work is. So the
Thank
work you
you.
do is incredible. I'm about ready to get on a plane and start traveling. and and
Please.
and it's just beautiful to capture what the world, how big and how beautiful the world is. So thank you
Awesome.
so much. If y'all have any questions, let us know in the chat before we start to sign off. If please make sure you do check out Esteban's website, give him a follow on Instagram as well. Esteban, do you have any? I know we mentioned that you have classes. Do you have any kind of prints or anything of that sort? That was a question that I wanted to ask you before we signed off.
Like if I lead classes or like print selling, that's what you're
Yes,
asking?
yes. Is
Yeah,
that do
well,
we
I'm
access that through your website? Sorry.
yeah, everything is through my website.
Perfect.
I also teach at the School of Visual Arts in New York. If you happen to be here in New York, I do teach a travel photography course, and I do lead workshops around the world. We have one for South Sudan this year, so it's also on my website. I have photography workshops in English, in Spanish, if you're Spanish speakers. And of course I'm constantly on like different Adobe platforms, sharing what I know and what I love about Adobe. So not only about Lightroom but also about Premiere and other software that Adobe has. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks. Yeah.
just for us to go ahead and quickly close, if you guys are new to After Effects and have no animation experience, I have zero experience. So this is also for me. Animation 101 is the perfect series for you. Join Ray, aka Pixie Poo, where she'll be covering follow through and drag features, also known as overlapping animation. Awesome. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.
Take
Thank
care.
you.